Hello and welcome to the Beyond Biotech podcast number 127. I'm Jim Cornell and this is the weekly podcast from Labiotech. A slight departure this week as we're talking to two companies about the recent JPM event in San Francisco, or to give it its full name, the 43rd Annual J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference. It's always a highlight of the biotech year, and it's a great way to see right at the beginning of the year if there are any trends within the industry. I guess there weren't a load of deals made this year, but that isn't necessarily a trend. A couple of topics that were somewhat connected but with no definitive answers were an increase in biotech companies and research coming out of China and the new Trump administration in the US. It remains to be seen exactly what policies the Trump administration will introduce in pharma and drug pricing, and also what they will do with respect to trade and cooperation with China. So lots of questions. And of course, the artificial intelligence debate is also a very hot topic as it continues to evolve and grow within the industry. But more importantly, let's hear what a couple of participants at the JPM event thought. We had the opportunity to catch up with Orca Bio's co-founder and CEO, Ivan Dimov, and also Parabilis Medicines' Chief Business Officer, Greg Miller. We'll start with the answers from Orca Bio first. I wonder if, before we talk about the event itself, you could give us a bit of background on the company.
So Orca Bio is a high-precision cell therapy company. We use single-cell precision to build therapies that control the immune response and cure blood and immune diseases. We're currently in late stages of development with trials ranging from phase 1 all the way to phase 3. And our initial focus is on resolving the mortalities associated with terminally ill patients that would be undergoing allogeneic stem cell transplants. Our lead investigational cell therapy is Orca T. It is in a pivotal phase 3 trial that we expect to read out pretty soon in the first half of this year. In parallel, we are advancing a robust pipeline of investigational products for the treatment of other hematological malignancies, such as multiple myeloma and lymphoma, and autoimmune diseases as well. We're excited to present a JPM for the 5th year in a row, kicking off the private track Monday morning. I reviewed our strategic priorities and anticipated milestones for the year ahead and beyond, which was largely centered around ensuring preparedness for our commercialization of our first product, Orca T. I also shared exciting data that we published at ASH around our second and third generation products for patients suffering from other hematological malignancies beyond just the leukemias. Each year, JPM presents a unique opportunity to engage with key investors, analysts, and other industry experts on the latest industry happenings and forecasting the year to come. This year was no different for us at Orca Bio. We were very happy and privileged to be able to participate.
And what were your impressions of the event this year? Kind of your highlights, I guess?
So this year's meeting reflected a complex sentiment within the industry, marked by cautious optimism amid prevailing challenges. As far as the broad themes that emerged throughout the week, I'd say that the biggest headlines were around M&A activity, debates on innovation coming out of China, patent cliffs that many big pharma companies are facing, and the uncertainty of the administration change in Washington, D.C. It's hard to ignore major deals that led the week. With the industry bracing for a series of patent cliffs, large cap players returned to high-value deal-making after several years of pretty muted signals on the M&A front. Some of the examples, starting off in the first day, was led by J&J, right, a $15 billion acquisition in the neurology space. Then Eli Lilly with a $2.5 billion acquisition in the breast cancer space, and GSK, a $1 billion acquisition in oncology. So it's really good to see that M&A is opening up again, and it's very encouraging. I'd say the prevailing mood amongst attendees was one of cautious optimism, with the industry's forward progress set to confront a mix of new and existing challenges. And I walked away feeling not only energized for what is coming out of Orca, but also encouraged and hopeful for the biopharma industry in the year ahead. While JPM did underscore existing challenges, and there was definitely a bit of momentum lacking from the markets, and that was noted by most folks, it also highlighted the areas of potential growth and innovation, indicating a cautious, optimistic look for the biopharma industry's future.
Were there any deals or announcements at the event that you thought were particularly significant?
I'd say I was definitely very surprised by the spree of M&A deals. That was very encouraging and wasn't necessarily expected. That's definitely one thing that was interesting. Another thing that caught my attention quite a lot is conversations around innovation coming out of China and how there's been an acceleration of acquisition of Chinese assets. That was definitely a new thing that has been accelerating, and I felt that was very compelling too. But ultimately, I think the biggest surprise for me was just the amount of AI-related companies, talks, and this whole new sector in the healthcare world that's opening up with the new technologies coming out of Silicon Valley and beyond that really allow you to do so many more tasks that before were very difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. So I think all the digital health companies, a lot of the AI tools that are being used in drug development and discovery, a lot of the AI tools that are helping out clinical operations and research in general within the pharma industry, that was also very surprising. It was the first time that NVIDIA presented at J.P. Morgan, which is definitely a new development. So I think the integration of these new technologies within the pharma industry has been a very interesting development for me, and somewhat surprising at the speed at which it's happening.
And did you find that there were any biotech sectors or maybe diseases or conditions that were more prominent than others this year?
So, similar to the last 2 years at JP Morgan, oncology seems to have continued to be the most discussed therapeutic area. The developments we're seeing in the space are very encouraging. As mentioned previously, GSK agreed to acquire IDRX for up to $1.15 billion, aiming to strengthen its oncology pipeline. Eli Lilly purchased Scorpion Therapeutics that has an experimental cancer therapy for up to $2.5 billion. And AbbVie's option to license a new blood cancer drug candidate from Simcere Pharmaceutical, valued at up to $1.06 billion, really underscore the industry's focus on expanding cancer treatment options. These substantial deals reflect a broader trend of increased deal making within the healthcare sector, driven by, I think, the anticipation of a potentially more lenient antitrust environment under the incoming administration.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Ivan. That's Ivan Dimov, the CEO and co-founder of Orca Bio. And now let's turn it over to Greg Miller, and we'll ask the same questions of him, starting with some background on the company and the reasons for attending JPM.
We'll start with Parabilis because I think obviously it's relevant to just know where the company is and how it fits into the JPM landscape. As you probably know, it's about a 9-year-old company, formerly Fog Pharma, and really with that vision of using peptides in an alpha helical constrained structure to get into cells and target intracellular targets that previously had not been druggable. Greg Verdine as the founder many years back. And really, I came into the company a little over a year ago. The company had just moved in to clinic with a beta-catenin inhibitor. And so step back, beta-catenin is a target that has been, you probably have seen it throughout the landscape of undruggables and well defined as a driver of colorectal cancer and many other solid tumors. And so the ability to target beta-catenin has long been held as a holy grail. And so in coming in, already there was exciting in vivo validation data and a great package going into the clinic. And so that program is now in clinic and translating well. Matai presented at JPM for the second time this year. Matai Mammen, obviously, he joined as CEO about a year and a half ago when really that program was on the cusp of entering into the clinic. And so he presented some validating translational data in patients from the phase 1 trial that's ongoing, which shows that we have PRs in tumors that are, I'd say, in the simpler side of tumors, desmoid tumors, craniopharyngioma patient. And we have some really compelling data that's unrolling in colorectal cancer, and we'll continue to unroll that as it grows over this year. So the Helicon platform has now been validated in clinic, and probably equally important is that we now have a second program that has in vivo validation, which is targeting ERG, another intracellular protein that has previously not been able to be achieved with small molecules and obviously with antibodies. And it's a key driver of prostate cancer. And so we have in vivo validation of that now, and we're actually approaching that using the Helicon peptide in addition to a ligase for degradation. It's a fantastic time to be part of a platform company that has this level of validation. And frankly, peptides are at a really unique moment in time right now where they're not as commoditized as antibodies and small molecules. They're a little bit more complex to make, but they are widely accepted as therapeutics, for example, GLP-1s, of course. So it's really in that sweet spot of both innovation, but de-risking that allows a company like ours to really build on that and really tackle hard biologically validated targets. We went to JP Morgan. Really, we have a lot of interest in collaboration around our lead program, FOG001, the beta-catenin inhibitor. We use this as a bit of an update for where that program is with potential partners. And we do intend to establish a partnership that would still allow Parabilis to grow as a company and participate, but also to globalize and really maximize the program as quickly as possible. But we use this more as an update as we think about later in the year how we want to proceed with that partnership. Also, to highlight the platform capabilities now that it's been twice validated, and really to start to think about both how can we enable partners with targets both in oncology and outside of oncology through collaboration, but also how can we expand our capabilities through collaboration.
What were your impressions and highlights for this year and maybe compared to previous versions?
It felt a little more tame, but that's not a bad thing. It feels like it was more kind of regression to the mean in some ways. There have been a lot of years where it feels like the event invites a type of distraction that it's not unhealthy, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not mission oriented. And it felt this year that there's an awareness of the fact that there isn't time for lack of focus, that we need to be able to very clearly enunciate what is our value proposition, how it would enable progression in discovery, and ultimately how it fits into the disease state. The saying steak versus sizzle, it felt like everyone is looking for steak right now. There isn't the feeling that there is going to be an introduction of a new concept that will solve both pipeline holes and loss of exclusivity at the same time as all of our health problems. So understanding your technology, understanding where it can best address health, and putting the thought into it and not expecting the thought to be done by the potential partner.
Were there any kind of major deals or announcements or topics that you thought were particularly significant this year?
Well, certainly, I mean, everyone's focused right now on assets coming out of China. That's evident. That does cause a strain on funding in high risk innovation, because these are incremental, important, but incremental changes, but having assets that have the opportunity to really be considered de-risked and to reach the market, that's important to pharma. So there's less of a reward for companies that are really coming with a completely novel concept. The most significant deals that happened, I would say, probably Intracellular and Scorpion caught my eye. Scorpion in the fact that that was an acquisition with a spin out. That's intriguing for a company that has created meaningful value with a lead asset, but thinking through what is the right way to capitalize the company, bring a return to investors, I thought that was a really interesting deal. And the other one, of course, is Intracellular. Intracellular being kind of the converse of that, which is how do you take the time to build out a pipeline on your own and really persevere and create meaningful value to investors, but not necessarily be as on the radar as a number of other companies. I think those are two really contrasting deals, but really intriguing in ways in which companies have found a meaningful exit for their investors.
We have a new administration in the US and lots of questions still about what is the new administration going to do with pharma, relationships with other countries. Was that a cloud hanging over the event, or was it just kind of side discussions? Or
I'm a bit of a contrarian about this, so my own opinion may cloud my thoughts here. But I do think that if we're learning anything from, for example, how TikTok is being treated, I think there's support for whatever maximizes value. And I think that there's a lot of positioning, but I think ultimately driven by economic interests, there's likely to be solutions. I worry less about the geopolitical climate as long as there's a commonality of economic interests. There's creative ways to solve for it.
were there any sectors or disease areas that were more center stage than others?
Immunology as a whole has definitely taken center stage. I would say oncology, where we tend to focus our attention, people recognize it's a very challenging path as an independent company, and it's well worth pursuing. But I think as we continue to think about just risk mitigation in this current climate, parties are looking for less competitive or less crowded landscapes, although it becomes self-fulfilling because then everyone is glomming onto the same space. So it's cyclical in nature, but there was a lot of expertise that was built in the immunology space surrounded around immuno-oncology. So it kind of makes sense to build off of that expertise into other therapeutic areas. Say the jury is out still on rare diseases. There seems to be some interesting green shoots of reinvigoration of certain disease areas that fall under rare diseases, but it's a bit of a rethink as well. Certainly with the IRA as an overhang, it still forces one to think differently about pipelines within a product if it pertains to a rare disease. But I think outside of that, there's still some excellent opportunities within rare diseases.
Was it an optimistic feel that in terms of are people optimistic about the biotech and biopharma industries in 2025 and financing and all those things, or was there still a bit of fear?
I think the fear remains, but I think we're at a transitional state. I think we need to see this post-election cycle really bear out, see what happens. Of course, it always comes back to the rates for a number of factors, see how the ripple effect looks there. But, and of course, it doesn't help that there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of reductions in staff now. I mean, of course, people pay attention to that because that's usually done en masse while hiring's done on an individual basis. So it's kind of an over scrutinizing, but it's a cautious environment. But the things that need to get funded do get funded. It just takes longer. The scale of funding tends to be larger for those things that are de-risked or considered de-risked. So it's about what are the right opportunities. And I think that one could be optimistic if they fit into those descriptions. And then if you're thinking about starting a high risk editing company right now may not be the exact right time. It's a balance, but I do think that over the next 6 months or so, we'll have a lot more data points to know whether that caution is founded or not.
A really good overview of one of the most important biotech and biopharma events of the year, the J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference. Always an interesting start to the calendar year. Don't forget to check out the latest news and articles over at Labiotech.eu, and I hope wherever in the world you are, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.